eastern Caribbean Sea. The lower Parasmina is stiff with giant tarpon, and that's what brought us here. As an outdoor writer, Tom does a lot of fishing in a lot of places. He's got to fish. It's his job. Tom goes fishing all the time. But he's got this neighbor, see? Old Chuck there. And for years he's given Tom the needle about getting paid for going fishing. And worst of all, never taking him along. Chuck isn't really too much of a fisherman, but when this Costa Rican trip was shaping up, Tom decided he'd stop Chuck's ribbing by bringing him to the Parasmina. So, Chuck, Ron, Tom, and I flew out of Miami one bright afternoon to San Jose, Costa Rica's largest city, then flew from there in small charter planes to Carlos Barante's fine fishing camp, the Parasmina Tarpon Rancho. The fishing camp is smack in the hamlet of Barra de Parasmina, a tiny native village unchanged today from what it was 50 years ago. This Central American Republic of Costa Rica is rightfully called the land of eternal spring, with a mean temperature year-round a blissful 70 degrees. It's the sort of place where sarongs seem more in order than skirts, and where coconuts grow free for the picking, though they may sometimes be guarded by morose-looking buzzards. While friendly Costa Rica is underdeveloped, what with that nearly impenetrable jungle everywhere, it's a growingly prosperous country, exporting mahogany, cocoa beans, hemp, coconuts, and bananas. A friendly and clean environment has made the Costa Ricans a peace-loving, intelligent, happy people. We spent our first few hours at Parasmina acquainting ourselves with the local citizenry, wandering through the village, visiting, talking. Spanish is the native tongue, but even out in the boondocks, many Costa Ricans speak at least some broken English. This is the Barra de Parasmina jail. Honest, that's what they said. But there are no doors and no bars, which shows there hasn't been much need for the jail. Probably building the jail was the idea of some visiting contractor from the States. Dick and Elaine Broberg, an American couple, operate Parasmina Tarpon Rancho for Carlos, and Elaine conducted us on our tour of Barra Parasmino. The natives were fashioning this dugout canoe from a huge cedar log, a jungle art dating back to the beginning of time, and such craft are ideal for the jungle rivers. A piglet chase and ultimate capture gives Chuck another picture-making opportunity.
Know where that big spool of string is?
Yeah.
Mind the birdie, boy.
Thank you.
Oh, baby.
Ron, hand it up,
Hello?
Bob. We sure will. There you are.
In the morning, we rigged tackle, and this takes a little doing when it's tarpon you're going after. I rigged a trolling outfit with brilliant ultra-visibility monofilament line, while Tom set up a fly rod in case he had a chance to do some fly fishing, and Ron put together a heavy bait casting outfit and tied on a big tarpon-busting Rapala. Lures used in fishing for giant tarpon must be particularly well made. There are many plugs on the market that big tarpon can bite right in half, and many more whose hooks a good tarpon will straighten out like a safety pin. Knots are vitally important too, and it better be tied exactly right, or the first tarpon that hits will be gone. Drag setting's vital also, and here Ron sets his drag fairly tight as a striking drag, but he'll loosen it a bit when and if he hooks a tarpon. The inside of the tarpon's mouth is like concrete, and it takes needle-sharp hooks and repeated strikes by the angler to drive hooks home. There are 3 different kinds of tarpon fishing at Parasmina: fishing the river proper, fishing in the lower tidal lagoons, which are like small lakes, or when weather and tide permits, fishing beyond the river mouth in the open rolling sea. We tried the river first, and in no time, maybe on the 3rd or 4th cast, I had a strike, and what a strike. That tarpon almost tore the river apart. And the guide, Alexander, really had his hands full trying to keep the boat properly positioned.
I come back on here and wham. Try and turn him now, man. Close enough.
No fish fights just like a tarpon. Up and out, twisting, turning, then down deep and pulling hard. These fish have no concern for man or boat, nor brush and bank. And many a hooked tarpon has come blindly leaping right into the fisherman's boat. And many another tarpon, leaping close to shore, has fallen into trees or left themselves high and dry doing flip-flops on a grassy bank.
Man, he had it down. I told you that bull would do it, kiddo.
It's no simple chore moving a giant tarpon on light bait casting tackle, the same kind of tackle most fishermen use for freshwater bass fishing. But I'm having fun hanging in there. I'll give it all I've got. Ron merely relaxes and enjoys the action.
Really got it down. Oh, look out, he's got...
Notice how concerned and excited Alexander is? He doesn't even bother reaching for the gaff because he knows a fisherman is lucky, very lucky, if he gets 1 out of 5 tarpon he hooks anywhere near the boat.
Don't jump now, mister. Don't jump now. Hold her. Attaboy, almost, Alexander.
But finally, Alexander figures this one is ready. Gaffs it. He passes the tarpon on to Ron and me to do the heavy hoisting.
Okay. Let's see him, Billy. How big is he? There he is. About 60. There he goes.
And wouldn't you know it, there goes Chuck again. Snap, snap, snap.
Oh, beautiful. Hey.
This being the first big tarpon Chuck had ever seen, he insisted we run right back to the dock and make more photos, even though he hadn't caught it. We hammed it up pretty good, backslapping, handshaking, all that sort of thing, while Tom's friend and neighbor went snap, snap, snap. It rained some in Costa Rica. To tell the truth, it rains a lot. So when we started in again, thick gray clouds scudded across the sky, some rain pelted down briefly, then it cleared as we tried slow trolling in some of the deep, long pools upriver. We hadn't fished long when, kapow, old friend and neighbor put one in the air, just like that. Chuck's guide is about as nonchalant as you can be, but Tom tries to help Chuck all he can, with maybe just a little needling here and there. Do it this way, Chuck, he says. Then, no, do it that way. You got to bear down, Chuck. You've got to really put it to him. No sooner did Tom utter those words, and up came the tarpon, and out went that big plug. Friend and neighbor gave it to Tom pretty good then. You caused me to lose my first tarpon. Don't blame me, Chucky baby, Tom said. That's the way the tarpon tumbles. Some you get, most you don't. It was all in fun, and pretty quick we were back to trolling. Our big plugs wiggled and wobbled lifelike near the surface. We could easily tell where our baits were at any time because of the high visibility of this new bright yellow trolling line. The Parismena has other fish besides sabalo, the silver-sided tarpon. It's alive with snook, some going to 30 pounds and more. And there are jack crevalle, gaff topsail catfish, and some very unusual characters called quapote and muchaca, which is what these natives are trying for from their tippy dugout. Whoops, speaking of snook, there's one now. A snook or robalo is no tarpon, but they're strong, dogged fighters, and few fish are any better on the table.
He's rolled around in the damn leader.
Yeah.
Enrico gaffs him.
He's down there.
Hey, what's that flapping plug? Looks to be about 14 pounds, Tom says. Make it 12, Chuck says. 10 anyway, Enrico says. Then, of course, it's picture-making time. And once again, Chuck digs out the little camera and it's snap, snap, snap. Like all good jungle, the Costa Rican bush has its share of snakes, some of which are bad guys, like the tericipilo or fer-de-lance. Earlier, we had seen a fer-de-lance coiled on the riverbank. So when we went ashore here to examine a banana plantation, all of us were a little edgy, especially old Chuck. Somehow, Tom was conned into stepping ashore first. He picked up a stout stick and swatted here and there before moving around much. Just called Tom Chicken. I'm glad I wasn't first. We have our picture made by unripened bananas. And Chuck gets the fright of his life when Enrico slips quietly up on him and pinches him hard, making like a snake. This was my third trip to Costa Rica. Tom had visited the Parasmina more than a decade previously when there was no fishing camp. And I was enthralled as ever by this dark river and its silent, brooding jungle. Back there, beyond that nearly impenetrable wall of green, lurks El Tigre, the jaguar, plus tapir, a large pig-like rodent called tipisquinte, deer, howler monkeys, which the natives call baboons, white-faced monkeys, and countless kinds of birds, including parrots and swirling flocks of parakeets. This is a land of sparkling sun and tropic breezes, of sudden, soft, warm rain, of nearly constant bird song, and where you awake in the morning to the howling of monkeys and to the sweet, clean smell of air scented with the fragrance of wild orchids, flame of the forest trees, and a zillion other tropical flowers and plants. The Costa Ricans say this is a popongoche, or monkey nut, only the monkeys don't eat them. Under certain conditions of wind and tide, the mouth of the Parasmina is a shark-infested, frothing, dangerous cauldron. But now the opening to the sea is comparatively calm, so we work our way slowly and carefully through the inlet into the Caribbean. Here tarpon are stacked up like cordwood as schools of the fish move along the coast to the river mouths, thence upstream. Tarpon are rolling everywhere, and most of the time we cast directly to the fish we see. A big school is spotted, and off we go, fast and wild, to cut ahead of the moving fish and cast in front of them. Tom and Chuck get the first casts out. Bingo! Old friend and neighbor gets a tarpon on, and the fish comes out in a scudding leap. Tom does the camera work for Chuck, because you've got to have a photo record of a man's first tarpon. Doesn't feel like a tarpon now, Chuck says, and he's not jumping anymore. Be quiet and fight the fish, Tom tells him. It turns out Chuck is right, because it's not a tarpon, but a big horse-eyed Jack Crevalle. Chuck's tarpon had thrown the lure on the first jump, but this Jack fielded it like a ball player, and it all happened so fast, Chuck couldn't tell the difference. Another school of tarpon shows, so off we go. I've got one. Ron's got one to double, 2 big tarpon on simultaneously, brother. Now Tom's got one to triple, 3 tarpon at one time. Up, up, and away they go.
You saw him when he jumped.
Hang in there, Ron. Hold him, kid. Pump him, Tom. It's hard work trying to pump up a tough, heavy, hard-pulling tarpon on light tackle, and the heat makes the job no easier. Come on up out of there, you big, stubborn son of a gun. Tom signals Enrico to move up on the fish with the boat to shorten the line. Tarpon should be fought on as short a line as possible to keep lines stretch at a minimum and to permit maximum pressure to be applied to the fish. The fish is coming pretty good now, and he's pouring it on hard as he can. Oh no! After all that, the dang hook pulls out. Maybe he horsed him a little too much right at the boat. Who knows about tarpon? Oh well, he's caught tarpon before. He's worn out. His back is broken, his hands hurt, his legs are numb, he's sweating like a waterfall. It was a good fight, says Chuck, but you lost, kid. Ron and I are still hooked up, and our tarpon are bouncing into the air like silver-sided missiles. The longer a tarpon fight lasts, the smaller the chances of landing the fish. A tarpon's rough scales, lips, and gill plates can fray a leader, even a heavy shock tippet, and hooks can wear a hole and pull out easily.
Don't jump now.
So it is that Ron's tarpon at last throws the plug and is free. Darn, says Ron. Go on. Didn't want you anyway. Ron rests now as my tarpon does dippy-doos all around the boat.
Almost, Alexander, huh? Oops, he's under the boat.
The fish is close now, and Alec reaches with a gaff, yanks the tarpon up. The tarpon yanks back, is free. Watch the motor. Let's try him one more time, Alexander.
Got him on a Rapala.
That's it. We've got him. Well, at last.
Wow, he's not through fighting yet. He's halfway in the boat on the gaff, and he's still fighting.
That calls for a little handshaking, right? Right. Tarpon have a lung-like gas bladder, and they frequently roll at the surface to take in atmosphere air. Our fishing at the river mouth settled into a wild tarpon chase, where we wouldn't even cast unless we knew we were right on fish. We'd simply cruise slowly in the boats until we saw a surfacing school, and then, hell for leather, we'd take off at top speed to cut in front of the tarpon and cast to them when they drew near. Ron hooked this big one following one of our tarpon chases. And despite all sorts of advice from me, he's still doing a good job of playing the fish.
Try and turn him out. Close enough. Don't jump now. Don't jump now. Hold her. Attaboy. Oops. Almost, Alexander, huh? Oops, he's under the boat. Whoops. Attaboy.
Look out, he'll land in the boat.
Boy, he's really
Fight him, Ron. That away.
Try and turn him, Ron. I missed him.
There we go. Got him. We got him.
Come on, Alex, save the day.
We got him.
And he did. Ron is pooped, and who wouldn't be? Tarpon have little food value, so there's really no reason to kill them unless, of course, one is wanted for mounting.
Okay.
So this one goes back, unharmed but tired, to live to fight another day. Not only is fishing for giant tarpon a test of the angler's endurance, but it's also a severe test of the quality of tackle used. Big tarpon can smash rods, jam reels, straighten hooks, break plugs, pop lines, and pull out knots. This tarpon, hooked in the lagoon on the lower Parasmina by the river mouth, is really going at it. Oops, too bad. It's a little more than the tackle can take, and the line snaps. You just can't win them all, not where tarpon are concerned. Despite the fantastic hour-by-hour, day-by-day fishing at Parasmina, I began to think that Lady Luck was really against Tom's old friend and neighbor, and that no matter how hard Chuck tried, he wasn't going to get that tarpon. Fish after fish would belt his lure, only to throw it, break the line, or somehow go free. Chuck was feeling pretty low, though he kept smiling and kept working at it. I never saw a guy more determined to land a fish. All of us were pulling for good old Chuck. What was needed was a little cooperation from the tarpon. Take this afternoon, here beyond the river mouth. Everybody, but everybody got into tarpon except poor Chuck. Once Ron passed his rod to Alexander, our guide, and even Alex, who could barely cast, caught a tarpon right away. All you have to do here to nail a tarpon is reel a lure through the water. Toss it out there and try to bring it back before a tarpon hits it. For everybody but Chuck, that's about impossible. Sometimes it seems one guy in a fishing party has all the luck, and it's all bad. Finally, on our last day on the jungle line Parasmina, one of the guides suggested we fish a distant lagoon, a place called Pocari. Mucho tarpon there, he said. Senor Chuck, he get big fish. It was an hour's run to Pocari, but it turned out to be the best move we made. The surface was covered with rolling fish.
Got this place all foamed up. Right, that's the tarpon fish. Come on, Debbie. Get it. Well, like that, you say you're coming up for air, huh? Yeah.
On his third cast, old friend and neighbor sank the hooks good into a fine tarpon. On its first leap, we saw it was big, and Ron and I moved in just to shout encouragement. We all had our fingers crossed because Chuck just had to get this tarpon. Chuck played the fish beautifully. When it leaped, he bowed to the fish. That is, he dropped his rod tip quickly so that slack went into the line and the fish couldn't fall back on a tight line and break it or tear the hooks out.
That's tarpon, yeah. He's starting to turn over. Now, if you hit him with everything you got right now. You see, you got him now.
Enrico handled the boat just right, keeping Chuck well away from the bank so that the fish wouldn't fall into trees and break off.
I think he's got him one, too. That's the whole world now. Here we go. Here we go.
It was touch and go all the way, and I guess my heart was pounding faster than Chuck's. That tarpon was pulling the skiff around pretty good. Many a tarpon has jumped close to a boat and fallen right in, and nobody wanted that to happen. Enrico kept just the right distance from the fish, at least most of the time. Man, we were sweating this one out. Look out, Chuck. On jumps like that, they can really throw it. He's tiring now, Charlie, old boy. Just take it easy and be patient. That's it. Don't get excited. He almost came into the boat that time. Tom's so excited he can't get a good gaff hold on that fish. But there, got you, boy. Hey, how about that? Good going, Chuck. He looks like 115, 125 pounds anyway. I don't know who feels the best about this, Chuck, Ron, Tom, me, or the guide who told us to come fish the Pocari. I'm feeling like this is one of the biggest fishing moments of my life. Maybe now there will be no more needling from old friend and neighbor. This is the moment every fisherman lives for, to put a tarpon in the boat and shake hands with his friends and neighbors. Well, Chuck has got his tarpon. A real Costa Rican tailwalker he was, too. That's how it is with Sabalo, the Silver King, the great, grand, and glorious tarpon. Some you do, but most you don't. And maybe that's why every time you hook a tarpon, Costa Rican guides keep muttering, El Sabalo Magnifico.